I get the sensation that the tide has turned, that the moral panic that Styx Hexenhammer talks a lot about has reached its peak in the last few weeks. And now the great pendulum is going to start to slowly swing the other way, pick up speed as it goes, and punch a hole through a lot of the things that the left tried to construct as they pulled this pendulum as far as they've ever have in this country before. And with any luck, the Republicans are as reformed in character as they purport themselves to be, and they will not, once the ball is fully in their possession, just drag it as far to the right in answer to what the left just did. That instead, that they'll realize that it's sensible to hold it in the center, because once the ball is out of their hands again, it won't go quite so far to the left. That there's a great back and forth of how society works that creates this rhythmic cycle. That's not a predestined thing, because all things are written to become kind of shit, but because that human beings are just human beings, and there's just a natural way they react to various pressures and conditions, and it creates a wave pattern, like a lot of things do. But two of the things are specifically related to the culture war in Hollywood, both actually relating to subsidiaries of Disney. And I guess we're kind of to a point where Disney is like the Rome of Hollywood, because as Disney goes, so does the rest of Hollywood. And all roads seem to lead to Disney. So, hail Caesar, Bob Iger. Anyway, there's the firing of Chuck Wendig, which indicates who the scapegoats are going to become, for who they're going to blame Star Wars' loss of audience and thus profit upon. It's not going to be Kathleen Kennedy. As far as I can remember, of all the videos I've seen people do talking about Kathleen Kennedy stuff, I've never seen anything about her, saying anything nasty on Twitter or interacting in any kind of negative way with the fans or talking shit about anyone. The most I do tend to see is that stupid picture she took with the Force's female, which people seem to have taken as a declaration of something larger than it was, but whatever. They're not going to fire Kathleen Kennedy, but they did fire Chuck Wendig because he's documentedly been really shitty to people on Twitter. And I think those are the kinds of people working for Lucasfilm and other companies under the Disney umbrella that kind of need to worry, because that's the signal that's being sent. And those are the people that can be, from now on, blamed. It's like, oh, it's Chuck Wendig's fault. It's potentially Rian Johnson's fault if he continues to fucking run his mouth. Shit like that. But Kathleen Kennedy having one flop under her book, and I mean, she's had a long, illustrious career of being involved with the financing and promotion of a ton of really big movies. A lot of Spielberg's big hits alone would be enough. And whereas not every last single one of them has done great, and sometimes things just don't get the audience they're supposed to do, it doesn't mean you ignore the fact that she's helped make a whole bunch of other movies, make a whole bunch of other money. And so far, her track record, working at the top of Lucasfilm for Disney is 3 out of 4. So, and they still have a lot of other stuff. Rebels was a success, so that's 4 out of 5 now. Resistance, we'll see how that ends up going. What are the criteria that they're looking for? Do they connect with the demographic they're actually looking for? Because if they're making a show for kids, they might not be concerned about whether or not the adults like it or not. So it doesn't really matter what you think about Resistance if it's not for you. Stop watching it. I'm a Transformers fan, and I will watch some of their cartoon series, but some of them I do not watch because they're just a little bit too childish. You'll never catch me watching Rescue Bots. I didn't like Robots in Disguise or Armada and stuff like that. But I like Prime and Beast Wars. Because even though they're cartoons, hell, even Transformers Animated, despite its weird, wonky animation style, they still had kind of at least some attempt at a serious action adventure with some sci-fi kind of stuff going on with them, and it wasn't just purely just dumbed down little things where it's just teaching moral lessons to kids with big, bright, shiny objects. which is what Rescue Bots is. Like for what it is, it's great, but it's not for me. So, you know. So like, I don't know what to say about Resistance, but so right now though, including Rebels is something that she's had a hand in. She's had 4 out of 5 successes, and it's not like she's had any direct input. It's one of the problems with the Rey as a Mary Sue argument, because one of the ultimate points of a Mary Sue is that it's a stand-in for the writer. And I don't really see Rey being a stand-in for Lawrence Kasdan. And Kathleen Kennedy was not part of the writing room. So who exactly is it that Rey's a stand-in for? The girls watching the movie? Like all main characters are that in a way. So I don't know. They're not going to can Kathleen Kennedy. They might can Rian Johnson if he continues to talk and he gets in the same wave that some of the Marvel comic people and other comic artists of the SJW bent have been like being a little about the Chuck Wendig thing. It's like, well, you know, eventually it will happen to another one of them, and it'll keep happening until the rest get the fucking signal. Disney is smart enough, and Disney's whole MO is like selling wholesome family entertainment and all that kind of shit. They're not going to be chased away from half their potential market audience anymore over spurious allegations. Kavanaugh was the thing that peaked our little moral crisis. The Me Too movement failed and is probably dead now. The left is basically dead now. And they brought it upon themselves. This is all a creature of their own making. And that's why I say, be careful, Republicans, now that the ball's back in your court, that you do not make the same mistake the left just did, because who knows what the left will be like next time. We might be lucky and be living in an age where we all get to bear witness to the death of one of the great parties. This has not happened in a long time. And it's not just going to leave a void where it will be one party rule under Republicans, because there will be libertarians and Greens. And that the Democrat voters, without a Democrat party that's viable anymore, they'll split to those two. But also those two, especially the libertarians, will draw some people away from everyone who's currently aligned or unaligned. And so by virtue of not approving of the left's activities, kind of forced to be aligned with the right, they'll split out of the Republicans, and we'll have a nice little trio of parties, which might give us more of a kind of a coalition government like they have in England, where no one necessarily has a majority, 50%. So it's always forcing two parties that aren't natural allies to have to cobble up to some agreement. So it always kind of keeps things balanced in the middle, because it doesn't want just to let one political spectrum just fucking run ramshot with everything. And the Democrats, the cynical way that they've been trying to use the shadow of the communist revolution to try to energize the youth base, that is just as bad as if the right really had been trying to promote neo-Nazism. I mean, it's often the thing I see that I've noticed about the left, especially as I pull more distance away from it, is the level of projection that goes on. It's like everyone's always doing what they're actually doing. They're accusing other people. It's the constant. It's the same thing that the Republicans used to do with the whole gay thing, where you'd have a Republican congressman who's like super anti-gay legislation, and he gets fucking caught in a Minnesota public bathroom with a dick in his mouth and shit. And like the modern left screaming racism, it's kind of turning out that they're the racists, and I don't know. Watch Network. But anyway, the other thing beyond Chuck Wendig being fired that I find of note is ABC executives, another subsidiary company owned by Disney, admitting in an interview that maybe they shouldn't have fired Roseanne, that they're scared that The Conners as a show is going to tank without Roseanne there, and that maybe they should have actually taken a little time to look into what the hell was going on before, like, canning the lead actress of one of their biggest shows that was generating all sorts of buzz. Yeah. And that maybe it's best for companies to remain neutral and not take either side overall, at least as long as we're split the way we are. There's all the demographic studies that have been coming out. I'm pretty sure, like, those studies aren't made for people like us to read them and talk about them, or even people like Tim Pool. Those studies are paid for by companies and by government institutions so they can get a grip on what's really going on. And those studies do not show that pandering to the progressive agenda is going to pay off any sorts of dividends, because it just seems to be turning a lot of people off, actually. So, fingers crossed. Like, nothing is 100% sure, and it's early to say, but it's just a couple little things already that just really, yeah, the tide is turning, and things are going to flip for a lot of people. So, good luck, everybody. Hopefully you've accrued good karma over the last decade or so. I think September 11th is finally over.